Breaking news tonight, the tornadoes hitting the southeast right now, 60 million at risk for severe weather, with even more in the crosshairs in the days ahead. A twister slamming into a school in Alabama. The video just in, showing the destruction from above. Students injured, new security video of a playground being ripped apart. The same system spinning off tornadoes and dangerous winds across the Midwest and South. Now, there's another storm right behind it. Bracing for tariffs, President Trump promising his biggest round yet within days. How everyone from car dealers to grocery stores to the stock market are preparing. New claims against the doctor accused of trying to kill his wife in Hawaii. Why the wife says cheating allegations set him off. Let's our interview with the astronauts left in space for 9 months. Did they feel abandoned up there? Plus, Elon Musk is handing out $1 million checks to voters in a local race in Wisconsin. But who's taking home the prize? Top story starts right now. And good evening. Right now, millions are on alert as severe storms target the East Coast after carving out a path of destruction across the country. And it's not just this storm we're watching tonight, but a new round of life-threatening weather from coast to coast. Take a look at this new video of a possible tornado. This is in Midland City, Alabama, just southeast of Montgomery. You can see the massive funnel cloud on the move. That same system leaving several students injured at a school in Dalthall when the roof was ripped right off, debris tossed around the campus. Again, that's in Alabama. And further south, a possible waterspout spotted swirling in Pensacola Bay, Florida. New security cam video just in from northern Michigan as incredibly strong winds sent playground equipment flying. At this hour, more than 385,000 customers are without power. The worst outages are in Michigan as that ice storm brought down trees and power lines. And right now, the storm continues to put a strain on air travel. We're just learning moments ago that Newark International Airport is temporarily closing as severe storms move through. Hartsfield-Jackson in Atlanta, Charlotte-Douglas in North Carolina, and Boston-Logan all seen some of the highest number of delays and cancellations. And we're not out of the woods just yet. Another major storm system, look at this, is bringing the threat for tornadoes, damaging winds, large hail, and flash floods. We're going to break all the timing down in just a moment, but we want to start tonight with Adrian Broadus in the storm zone.
A scramble for safety. Students rushed out of classrooms in Alabama as multiple tornadoes swept across at least 7 states and killing 7 people, a number expected to rise. Nearly 70 million Americans still in the storm's path as Mother Nature showed her strength, slamming parts of the South and Midwest this weekend.
All of a sudden, just the wind gushed all at once, and you saw leaves and debris all flying, and then your visibility was gone.
There's another one. Look, there's another funnel.
The strongest tornado reaching gusts of 120 miles per hour in Louisiana as freezing rains turned deadly in Michigan, where 3 children aged 2, 4, and 11 died after a tree fell on their family minivan.
This family had no ability to, predict when a tree was going to fall on their vehicle.
In Indiana, 2 dead from high winds on the roads. The power is out in this neighborhood, and you can hear the hum of the generator. Those 60-mile-per-hour winds knock down trees, crashing into houses and cars. Steve Baker is the president of Indiana Michigan Power.
The biggest challenge right now is to make sure that we get the power restored for customers before the next round of weather hits, and to make sure that we're keeping our customers and the general public safe.
From ice to dangerous floods in the South, water filling the streets of Miami Sunday, drenching fans attending the famous Ultra Music Festival.
Because I've come from London to Ultra, and I'm not letting the weather stop me.
As the storm continues to move toward the northeast, more tornadoes are possible, but damaging winds and quarter-sized hail is the main threat as millions brace for round 2, wondering if the worst is yet to come.
Adrian Broadus joins us tonight from Elkhart, Indiana. Adrian, we can see the damage there just behind you, that massive tree. You've been on the ground in the aftermath of the storms all day. What have families told you that they're doing to prepare for this next round of storms?
Hey there, Tom. Right now, they're really trying to secure any loose debris and tree limbs like this. Really anything that could fly and injure someone when those winds pick up. The homeowner here said it could be days before someone from his insurance company shows up to assess the damage. And as you pointed out, this massive mature tree fell on top of his house and the car. And with that extra storm coming in later this week, he says the wait could even be longer. Tom?
Adrian brought us for us right there in the storm zone. Adrian, we thank you for that. There is another round of dangerous storms we were telling you about. It's starting up. NBC New York meteorologist and a good friend of mine, Rafael Miranda, is tracking that for us tonight. Rafi, great to see you. Tell our viewers what we should be expecting.
Yeah, Tom, great to be here. Unfortunately, no break for us. Even right now, we're tracking severe thunderstorms moving towards Charleston, the Carolina coastline. Now, here in the Northeast, New York City, Philadelphia, D.C., we've been waiting for these storms all day. They're just about knocking on the door. The potential is there for severe storms after the commute, thankfully, but it could be a rough evening ahead. Flash flooding a possibility, some very heavy rainfall between 1 and 2 inches in some spots. We'll be watching that flood threat throughout the evening, and that could affect travel. And then the next storm, tomorrow, late in the day, we see that storm moving into the Rockies. That's going to give us another chance for severe thunderstorms, especially tomorrow night into the overnight, those dangerous nighttime tornadoes that we're concerned about in parts of the plains. And then into Wednesday, more severe storms firing up as this cold front marches towards the east. Eventually, Thursday, another threat. Here's the threat for tomorrow. Again, mainly at night. Tornadoes a possibility. We have that enhanced risk for Kansas, including Kansas City and down towards the south. Large hail a possibility, 2 inches plus in places like Wichita and Oklahoma City. Heading into Wednesday, again, 72 million at risk. Tornadoes possible here in this enhanced area, including Chicago, Indianapolis, all the way down towards the south. And then Thursday, the risk slides to the east of it. So it's going to be a very busy week ahead. Tom?
All right, millions on alert all week long. Rafi, we thank you for that. The countdown to President Trump's sweeping new tariffs is on as we transition to politics with promises of a major announcement in just 2 days. This coming as consumers and business owners brace for a 25% tax on imported cars and even auto parts. NBC's Garrett Hake is on the ground in Detroit for us tonight.
Tonight, the countdown continues to President Trump's promised reciprocal tariffs. The president expected to slap import taxes on allies and adversaries alike worldwide, but keeping the specifics under wraps, with a Rose Garden rollout planned for Wednesday.
I think it's going to be something that's going to bring a lot of wealth back to our country, tremendous wealth back to our country.
That's left businesses and buyers of everything from pharmaceuticals to food to computer chips guessing at what the president has suggested will be a massive reordering of American trade. One of the few tariffs detailed by the White House is the 25% levy on imported vehicles beginning Thursday and on auto parts by May 3rd.
The people that are going to make money are people that manufacture cars in the United States.
But in Metro Detroit, home of the American auto industry, the picture is murkier.
How do you compare the uncertainty of this moment before these tariffs kick in to other things you've seen in your career?
I'm more uncertain now than I was for COVID.
Jim Seavitt has owned Village Ford in Dearborn since 1982.
Is there any such thing as a fully American vehicle anymore?
Not that I know of. No.
Not on this lot?
No. Most of the cars have 4 parts coming from Mexico, 7 from Canada, and 7 from the U.S. So it's a world economy.
So even a brand as American as Ford is going to be caught up in this?
Yes.
Goldman Sachs estimates the tariffs could add $5,000 to $15,000 to the price tag of foreign-made cars and $3,000 to $8,000 on cars made in the U.S. because of the tax on parts. On Saturday, President Trump telling NBC News he, quote, couldn't care less if foreign car makers raised their prices to pass on the tariff costs. Auto worker James Benson agrees.
You believe in this tariff program across the board?
Yeah, I do.
He says he's optimistic the president's programs will lead to more jobs like his coming back and be worth the cost.
How will you judge if this has been successful?
Well, if we have job growth and we have jobs returning to our country and we have, values coming back to where they used to be, I definitely see that, coming in the future.
Garrett joins us tonight from Dearborn, Michigan on that lot tonight. Garrett, our viewers are going to be hearing about this Liberation Day coming from the White House and President Trump himself. Walk our viewers through exactly what it means and what it is.
Yeah, Tom, look, to make it make sense, you have to understand that President Trump really firmly believes that for basically your and my adult life, since the 1980s, the U.S. has been taken advantage of by trading partners, by our friends and by our adversaries alike, and that it's up to him essentially to reverse that trend by putting in place these tariffs that could counteract not just the prices that the tariffs that other countries put on American goods, but also the tax systems that other countries use or the low wages that other countries offer their workers, and essentially free American workers from the global trade system that we've been in since the late 80s and early 90s. So he uses that term Liberation Day to kind of describe this broader package of tariffs that the White House hopes to roll out on Wednesday. I say hope so, Tom, because it's really unclear as we talk here Monday night exactly what's going to be in this package. Different advisors from the Treasury Department, from the U.S. Trade Representative's office, from the White House itself have painted different pictures of exactly what the president will accomplish on Wednesday and what's still a negotiating tactic or in negotiations for him. So it's all a bit of a mystery here, 48 hours from when it's supposed to be unveiled.
All right. Garrett Hick explained it all for us tonight. Garrett, we thank you for that. Sticking with President Trump now, he's now teasing the possibility of running for a third term. It's something he's joked about in the past, but now he's telling our Kristen Welker he's serious about it, even entertaining ideas on how to get around the Constitution, which forbids it. Our Peter Alexander has more from the White House.
Tonight, new fallout after President Trump did not rule out the possibility of a third term, even though it's prohibited by the 22nd Amendment of the Constitution.
People are asking me to run, and there's a whole story about running for a third term. I don't know. I never looked into it. They do say there's a way you can do it, but I don't know about that. But I want to do a fantastic job.
In an exclusive phone interview, NBC's Kristen Welker asked the president about a possible scenario where Vice President Vance is elected with President Trump as his running mate, and then Vance steps aside. The president saying that's one method, but there are others too, saying he would not talk about them. Still, that could require amending the Constitution to allow Trump to run for re-election.
There's no proposal to change the Constitution right now.
Republicans telling reporters the president was not being serious.
I think he's probably having some fun with it, probably messing with it.
President Trump has repeatedly joked about a third term.
I think I'm not allowed to run again. I'm not sure. Am I allowed to run again?
But on Sunday, the president told NBC News, "I'm not joking." Meanwhile, as Tesla becomes a target of new vandalism and violence, the company's CEO, a top Trump ally, Elon Musk, hosted a town hall in Wisconsin ahead of a crucial state Supreme Court election tomorrow. Musk offering money to voters there who signed a petition against what he calls activist judges, handing out a pair of $1 million checks last night. Democrats accuse him of trying to buy the seat, but Musk says he's just trying to energize voters in a state Trump won last fall.
If the people that voted for President Trump simply vote on Tuesday, we will win. That's actually all it takes. Just vote. Boom, done. Victory. So.
All right, with that, Peter joins us tonight from the White House. Peter, it was quite the sight today in the Oval Office. President Trump signing an executive order on ticket scalping with Kid Rock there behind him. But he also made some news on Ukraine's ceasefire negotiations. Where do we stand there?
Yeah, that's right. The president tells NBC News that he is, quote, very angry at Vladimir Putin for criticizing Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, threatening to impose additional tariffs. The president says 25 to 50% on Russian oil, Tom, if Vladimir Putin stands in the way of any deal.
All right, Peter Alexander at the White House. Peter, we thank you for that. In the Middle East tonight, Israel issuing evacuation orders for a major city inside of Gaza and what could be the biggest escalation in months. That warning, even as Israeli airstrikes hit inside Gaza, as Palestinian families mark the end of Ramadan, the holiest month of the year for Muslims. NBC News international correspondent Matt Bradley reports tonight from Tel Aviv.
Israel's army is expanding its attacks against Hamas in Gaza, nearly 2 weeks after it resumed fighting, announcing new evacuation orders to include the entire region of Rafah in southern Gaza, its largest such order since Israel broke a 2-month-long ceasefire. It comes as Gazans celebrate one of Islam's holiest holidays. But in Gaza, prayers for Eid al-Fitr are surrounded by rubble. And according to Palestinian health officials, Israeli airstrikes often kill the most vulnerable. The Abu Sultan family, already displaced, were sheltering in their tent when missiles struck over the weekend, killing 8 family members. The children were in their holiday best. Hassan is 4 years old and Habiba, she's 7, said Mona al-Harani, a relative. They're dressed for Eid. They were murdered while wearing Eid clothes. Last night, Israel's cabinet approved plans to intensify the fight in Gaza. Israel's prime minister said it would increase the crushing of Hamas and create the best conditions for the release of our hostages.
I'm just going to check to see if there's any human remains in here.
As the IDF pushes deeper into southern Gaza, a grim search for the bodies of 15 aid workers were discovered there after they disappeared a week ago.
We arrived at the site where the ambulances were hit. These ambulances have been buried under sand.
The UN said 8 of them worked for the Palestinian Red Crescent and 1 was a UN staffer. In a statement, the Israeli Defense Forces said the ambulances had been advancing suspiciously toward IDF troops without headlights or emergency signals. Their movement was not coordinated in advance. The statement said the group included 9 operatives for Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad. But the UN says they were simply emergency workers, among more than 1,000 killed since October 7th, 2023.
Health workers should never be a target, and yet we're here today digging up a mass grave of first responders and paramedics. So they were here to save lives. Instead, they ended up in a mass grave.
Yesterday, they were finally buried. A solemn ceremony flanked by other rescue workers whose ranks continue to thin as the war in Gaza drags on.
And Tom, despite how the casualty count in the Gaza Strip continues to rise, believe it or not, there's still some bit of negotiations that are still ongoing to try to release those remaining hostages. According to Reuters, the Israelis submitted a proposal that would see a more than a month-long ceasefire in the Gaza Strip return for the exchange of about half of those remaining living hostages, of whom there are thought to be about 24 of them, and half of the remaining dead hostages, of whom there are thought to be about 35. But despite that, it seems unlikely that Hamas would agree to something that would give away its last leverage for further negotiations. Tom?
Dire situation remains there. Okay, Matt, we thank you for that. When we return, astronauts back here at home opening up after 9 months in space. How Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams are readjusting to life back on Earth, and how they really feel about that 270-day extension to their trip. We are back now with NASA astronauts Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams speaking out for the first time back here on Earth after their short test flight turned into a 9-month stay in space. NBC's Tom Costello has that interview.
And splashdown, Crew 9 back on Earth.
Nearly 2 weeks after their spectacular return to Earth.
Earth is nice.
Butch Wilmore and Suni Williams opening up about that 10-day mission that turned into 286 days, a remote possibility that had always been on the table.
We came up with a plan and prepared to deviate from that plan, and that's exactly what we enacted. All that preparation we did for all the various things that we wound up doing over the next 10 months. We enacted that plan.
President Trump has said President Biden abandoned the astronauts, and Elon Musk offered to rescue them last fall. But former NASA Chief Bill Nelson, his deputy, and NASA sources all tell NBC News they knew of no such offer. By midsummer, the plan was to return the pair with SpaceX Crew 9.
We were planning, from day one to return toward the end of February.
Delayed till March due to a SpaceX rocket issue. Did you ever feel abandoned up there? Did you ever feel that NASA, the White House, anybody had abandoned you?
Felt abandoned? No. I mean, I didn't think about those type of things. We were busy. We were focused on our mission from day one until we came back, and that was our primary focus.
I'm going to springboard real quickly on Butch's answer, because the we that he's talking about is not Butch and Suni.
Yeah,
the
exactly.
we is a huge amount of people that we knew and we trust down here at Johnson Space Center, at NASA, all over the world for the International Space Station, that were coming up with a plan. So actually, I don't think any of us were really feeling abandoned, because we knew that there were so many people down here who were focused on making sure that the right crew complement was there, we do the right things, and we get home safely.
Back home safely, and that spectacular splashdown beamed live around the world. What wasn't seen as widely was their family homecomings. When you finally got your feet on the ground and you finally saw your families, what's the first thing you wanted to do? I'm sure give them all a hug, but then what?
Well, we landed at Ellington. Our families came on board the aircraft, and there were a group of people that were there. Some of them the ones that we asked to be there, that were instrumental in getting us to the space station. I went down the line and hugged everybody's neck,
Yeah, Butch.
I wish there were more that were there. I'd love to have more of them. So it was great to see those individuals face to face after so long.
Well, my husband was there on the airplane when we arrived at Ellington, and that was wonderful. I think he hugged Butch, as a matter of fact.
He did. I
did. And then he hugged me.
And Suni finally reunited with her dogs.
He lost his mind a little bit and came up and gave me a big lick, and then he was, oh, wait, I need to go get a stick and pretend I don't care too much.
Suni, anything final to say?
After 9 months in space, what did they want to do the most after seeing their families?
Gravity makes you tired, very tired. So it was time to go and get some rest.
It was a long day, and so sleep was great, and it was just really nice to lay down in a bed. We hadn't done that for many months, and so actually to just sit down and just fall back felt really awesome.
Did you sleep okay that first night in a bed?
Oh, heck yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
One of life's simple pleasures finally fulfilled back on Earth. What food did you miss the most when you were up on station?
Sorry, 2 words. Chicken salad.
A latte.
Have you all had your cravings satisfied?
Yes.
Too much. Absolutely. Yeah, too much.
A latte and chicken salad. All right. For more on Suni Williams and Butch Wilmore's extended mission, tune in tomorrow night at 10:30 p.m. Eastern for Mission Space right here on NBC News Now. News feed, a single-engine plane crashing into a Minnesota home, killing the pilot and sparking a massive fire this weekend. The video showing the plane falling out of the sky near Minneapolis, you see it right here, crashing into the home where one person was inside. That man somehow escaping out the kitchen door as the house was engulfed in flames, as you can see. U.S. Bancorp saying the company's vice chair, Terry Dolan, is believed to be the pilot. The National Transportation Safety Board says there was only one person on the aircraft. An air traffic controller at Reagan Washington National Airport charged with assault after a fight in the control tower. Politico first reporting that last week. 2 air traffic controllers got into a physical fight in the control tower. One of the controllers now charged with assault and battery. The FAA saying he is on administrative leave. No word yet on what led up to that fight. An update tonight in the tragic deaths of Gene Hackman and his wife. Late today, a judge blocking the release of body cam video and other images that show the bodies of Hackman and his wife. However, other images from the scene and documents related to the case will be released to the public. A lawyer for the Hackman family estate originally asked the courts to seal those records for the case to protect the family's privacy. No word yet on when those documents will be released. And a consumer alert to tell you about tonight. The FDA is recalling thousands of pounds of ground coffee that were mislabeled as decaffeinated. The recalled bags of, get this, our family Traverse City Cherry Decaf Light roast ground coffee, very specific there, were sold across 15 states. The FDA saying the error may cause temporary health consequences for people who cannot have caffeine. Also overseas, President Trump taking a new, more combative approach in negotiations to end the war in Ukraine, lashing out at Russian President Putin after he called for a transitional government in Ukraine, possibly pushing out President Zelensky. Trump telling NBC's Kristen Welker in an exclusive interview he is very angry and pissed off with Putin, saying he may level secondary tariffs on countries that buy Russian oil if he can't get a ceasefire deal and thinks Russia is to blame. President Trump sold himself in the 2024 campaign as a historic deal maker who could end the wars in Ukraine and the Middle East. But with Ukraine talks getting stalled and the Gaza conflict reignited, questions are now growing about whether the president can get peace across the finish line. Joining Top Story tonight is Josh Rogan. He's the lead global security analyst with the Washington Post. Josh, thanks so much for being here. I want to start with these new comments from President Trump on Putin. Shortly before the inauguration this January, you wrote in your paper this: Russian President Vladimir Putin's own cynical strategy is to use negotiations to buy more time for his aggression. Trump must avoid the trap. If Trump hopes to avoid being outplayed, he will need to recognize what every recent president has learned. Putin's goal is not peace, but dominance. He responds only to pressure. Do you think President Trump is taking your advice, and is this the kind of pressure Putin will respond to?
Well, Tom, it seems that President Trump is starting to realize that President Putin may not have peace as his first priority in Ukraine. And, of course, many people, including I, warned that this is exactly what was going to happen, that Putin would use the negotiating process to increase his aggression and to get Donald Trump to pull U.S. support for Ukraine. And so far, that's been the policy. Now we see that President Trump, now that we're into the negotiations, is starting to realize that Putin may be lying, that Putin may not be interested in a peace that Trump or Ukraine can accept. But whether or not that leads to President Trump actually increasing the pressure on Putin, imposing what I think he meant to be secondary sanctions, not secondary tariffs, by the way. I think he just misspoke. Whether or not they actually put pressure on Putin remains to be seen.
I do want to talk about potential tariffs, right? Because let's talk about some solutions here. I want to read to you something that was in the New York Times last week that caught my eye from former Council of Economic Advisors Chair Glenn Hubbard and former Deputy Assistant Treasury Secretary Catherine Wolfram. They write, in part, there's a simple way to improve the American hand. The administration should impose sanctions on any company or individual in any country involved in a Russian oil or gas sale. Russia could avoid these so-called secondary sanctions by paying a per-shipment fee to the United States Treasury. The payment would be called a Russian universal tariff, and it would start low but increase every week that passes without a peace deal. Josh, I remember when the start of this war, everyone said, and the United States, that was their first move, right? Russian oil, Russian oil. It seems not to have worked. When you look at the books, Russian oil is directly tied to Russian military spending. Is this a real solution?
Well, as you point out, Tom, over the last 3 years, there have been various ideas and schemes to try to take Russia's oil profits away from Russia, and none of them have worked for a very simple reason, is that the entire world energy markets are intertwined, and there are plenty of customers for Russian oil, no matter what we say about it. And moreover, you can't drop the price of Russian oil any lower than the price of American oil, because we're an oil exporter too, or you will undermine American businesses. There's also the consideration of economic pain for Americans if energy becomes more scarce, and what that will do to the cost at the pump for Americans, which Donald Trump has to also think about, and the markets. So for all of these reasons, putting pressure on Russia, especially in the oil and energy sector, is an extremely complicated and difficult thing to do, even when you're firing on all cylinders. And in the current environment, Tom, where the Trump administration is levying worldwide tariffs in the middle of several trade wars, I just am very skeptical that they're going to be able to pull it off.
Before we move on to Israel and Gaza, I do want to ask you there, I kind of want to put a bookend here. At the beginning of this year, it felt, if maybe naively so, we may get some peace in Ukraine with Russia. It feels like we're getting further away from that. What is your sense?
My sense is that the Trump administration's theory of how to get to peace was never really aligned with the reality of the war on the ground in Ukraine. In other words, they have this vision where European troops go into the breach and the Americans, have a role in brokering a ceasefire and along the current lines, and somehow Russia agrees to all of that. And it was probably a view that was not rooted in the reality of the interests of both sides. And we saw first the Zelensky people reject that kind of idea. Now we're seeing the Putin people reject that idea. Wars end when one or both sides are too exhausted to keep on fighting, and we just may not be there yet, and the fighting may have to continue.
Let's turn to the war in Gaza as well. That ceasefire there completely collapsed. President Trump said his election was what made the ceasefire deal there possible, and yet now he's encouraging Netanyahu to break the ceasefire and resume attacks on Hamas. What is the strategy here?
Right. I think the status of the Israel-Hamas ceasefire was always more directly related to Israeli politics than to American politics, despite what President Trump has said. And the bottom line is that for reasons on both sides, Israel and Hamas have been reluctant to go to that next stage, to go to the stage of the ceasefire where they determine the final settlement. They can agree to stop fighting for a few days or a few weeks or even a couple months at a time. But if Israel sets an end goal that Hamas can't agree to, and Hamas sets an end goal that Israel can't agree to, we're no real closer to a permanent peace. And now that Netanyahu's political survival and his physical freedom are tied to the ongoing efforts to keep the war going, at least in the eyes, in the view of many, many Israelis, including hostage family members, I think we're unlikely to see anything more than a series of short temporary ceasefires. But even those short temporary ceasefires can result in hostages coming home, and that is, of course, the most important goal.
Before you go, I do want you to explain something to our viewers here. We have a Secretary of State, Marco Rubio. We also have an envoy to the Middle East, Steve Witkoff, who seems to be traveling to every conflict zone, seems to be handling all the major negotiations here. Who is really in charge, and how is this dynamic or this team working?
You know, it's a great question. According to my sources, Tom, Witkoff, Rubio, Vance, These guys all sort of work together. We saw that in the Signal chat. They kind of all keep in touch all the time in various ways. It's unusual because usually you would have a Secretary of State who would be more powerful than the president's best real estate buddy, but that's not the case anymore. So on any given day, Witkoff can be in charge or Rubio could be in charge. In the end, Donald Trump's the only one that can really make any decisions in this White House, and especially in this term. And so I think they're all trying to compete for his good graces and for his to appeal to his whims, and then trying to figure out where he wants to go and how to get the country there. And to be honest, it's pretty chaotic. The closer you get to the top of the Trump administration, the more chaos there is.
Josh Rogan, a good friend of Top Story, we thank you for being here. You can read Josh, of course, in the Washington Post. All right, time now for Top Story's Global Watch, a check of what else is happening around the world. We start with a tragic update out of Lithuania, where authorities have recovered the bodies of 3 American soldiers who disappeared last week. You may remember we first reported this. New video shows recovery teams digging the soldiers' armored vehicle out of a bog, which is a swampy pond, after it sank during a training exercise. Search and recovery efforts are ongoing for the body of a 4th soldier. The soldiers were based out of Fort Stewart in Georgia. So far, the DoD has not released the names of those soldiers. The French far-right leader Marine Le Pen sentenced to 4 years in prison and banned from public office for 5 years. A French court ruling that Le Pen and her National Rally Party embezzled more than 3 million euros in EU political funds to pay party staff between 2004 and 2016. The sentence shaking up France's 2027 election, where Le Pen was the likely frontrunner. And a German startup space rocket exploding in a fiery crash in Norway this weekend. You can see the launch appears successful at first, right? But take a close look. The unmanned rocket lifting off for a few seconds, but then it abruptly turns back towards Earth, erupting into a fireball as it crashes into the icy Arctic Ocean. The rocket was the first attempt at an orbital flight to launch from Europe. Back in this country, we have new details in a case we've been following here on Top Story. The Hawaii doctor accused of trying to kill his wife while at a popular tourist destination, now hit with a restraining order. Those documents shedding light on what the wife describes as a tense relationship and providing new information on the alleged murder attempt. NBC's George Solis has this one.
Tonight, there are new twists in the case of a Maui doctor accused of trying to murder his wife. Court documents obtained by NBC News painting a picture of jealousy and aggression by 46-year-old anesthesiologist Gerhard Koenig. In a restraining order petition, Ariel Koenig writing that after police launched a manhunt for her husband, he FaceTimed his adult son telling him, "I just tried to kill Ari, but she got away," and that he wanted to kill himself by jumping off a cliff. Ariel also writing she was fearful that Koenig would attempt to harm or kill me, as well as harm or kill our children. A judge agreeing, ordering Koenig to stay away from Ariel and the couple's 2 small children. Koenig was charged with attempted murder on Thursday after allegedly trying to push Ariel off a cliff and striking her in the head multiple times with a rock. Police say the attack happened when the couple was visiting the Pali Lookout just outside Honolulu. According to court documents, Ariel refused to take a selfie with Koenig. That's when he grabbed her arms and began pushing her towards the edge of the cliff. Court documents also revealing Koenig feared for her life if her husband was released from custody, adding last December he accused her of having an affair. According to her petition for the restraining order, the couple had also been in therapy and counseling.
She is a special person. She didn't deserve this.
Housekeeper and friend of the Koenig family, Christina Ferguson, in shock.
It's hard to fathom. It's hard to grasp the severity of this tragic incident. I wouldn't think that this would be something that he would ever do.
Koenig's attorney did not return NBC's request for comment. His bail is set at $5 million. The last update from Honolulu PD is that Ariel remains hospitalized with multiple injuries to the head and face. George Solis, NBC News.
And we thank you for watching Top Story tonight. I'm Tom Llamas in New York. Stay right there. More news on the way.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.